If you want to learn the JavaScript framework, Vue.js, then you are in the right place because that's what we're going to do in this video series. So welcome to this brand new video series called Vue.js the hard way. And why do I call it Vue.js the hard way? I mean, I'm calling it the hard way because we're going to do it sort of the old-fashioned proper way. When people always say, you know when people say, read the manual, right? That's what we're going to do. We're going to read the manual. We're going to read this get started guide. So notice how we're on the front page of the Vue.js frameworks, well, the web page for Vue.js. So we're going to go page by page by page through the documentation, and I'm actually going to read it to you. And I'm, of course, not going to read it to you letter by letter, I guess also because of copyright issues and I don't want to offend anyone. So I'm going to try to summarize. I'm going to sort of pick out the key points in my mind from each page in the documentation. But the intention is to get through the whole thing. So like, why would anybody do that, right? Well, if we get through the whole thing, we'll know like every detail of Vue.js. We'll hopefully learn tons of interesting stuff on the way. But if you want to use Vue.js, you'll have all the ins and outs of it so that, I mean, you'll be a master in no time because we've gone through all of it. And then there's just a bunch of practice left after that. Or, I mean, not after that. Presumably, you and I would both do it at the same time. Or, I mean, as we go through the series. And the reason I say you and I is also because I don't actually know Vue.js. But I've wanted to learn it for a super long time. And don't worry about it, right? Don't get concerned. Because, I mean, I've been doing lots of JavaScript and I've been programming for a long time. So no worries, it's not going to be a biggie. I'm pretty sure we can understand every detail of it. But this is why we're also going through the documentation sort of step by step. So here's what I'm also going to try to do. As we go through this documentation, I'm going to try to keep this, let me put it this way, I'm going to try to use my voice as much as possible rather than forcing you to look at the screen, okay? I love to multitask in the sense that I'm sort of watching / listening something on YouTube and then doing something else like doing the boring dishes or whatever. And sometimes when you're watching the code talks, you are lucky enough so that you don't actually have to watch the screen, but sometimes you are unfortunate enough so that you can't learn this thing because you have to sort of be glued to the screen all the time. And if I happen to fall into that trap where I'm sort of forcing you to look at the screen too much, please let me know in the comments and I will try to sort of explain more stuff using voice so that you won't have to keep your eyes glued to the screen at all times. I don't know. We will see if this works out or not. I think it's at least an interesting concept. But anyways, you want to learn Vue, I want to learn Vue. Let's get into it. There's nothing more to this now. So I mean, we're here at the front page of Vue.js, and they say the progressive JavaScript framework. Not really sure why it's progressive, right? But I read somebody who said embrace mutability, which is, so maybe from that perspective they would be progressive, right? Because like immutability is all the rage. And I mean, if you've watched my other videos, you know that I'm a huge fan of functional programming, huge fan of immutability, huge fan of React, right? But it seems like a lot of people are saying that this is actually a much simpler framework than, for example, React. You can sort of get started in no time. And I mean, who am I to say? That sounds fantastic, right? So let's just get into it. Let's click get started. And so yeah, we're thrown into this documentation here. Let me just scroll through the table of contents here so you get an idea, right? So like, this is the stuff that we're going to try to get through. Of course, I mean, we're not going to get into the migration and all of that stuff, but like, there's tons of interesting stuff here, like components in depth, right? Computed properties, watchers, conditional rendering, lots of interesting stuff. I mean, we'll see. We'll just go step by step. But now we are at the introduction. And notice also we've jumped over the installation page. So when we clicked get started, they threw us directly into the introduction page, but there's also an installation page. So I'm actually going to skip that as well. And also here on this first page, there is another link which says comparison with other frameworks. And I think video number 2 is probably going to be this one. We're going to jump into that page and sort of look through what they're saying, how Vue is positioned in relation to other frameworks. But apart from that, this is essentially the introduction, right? So they're saying Vue is a progressive framework for building user interfaces, right? Think about it. I mean, Vue, I mean, they're spelling it funny as in hue, but of course they mean view as in a view. And this, I think I read somewhere that it's so Vue is sort of MVVM inspired, which is model view model, like it's that pattern, right? So like there was the pattern MVC, which is model view controller, but then people like constructed a variant of that, which was MVVM, model view view model. And so, I mean, the crash course on this, right, is that a model is something that carries your data. It's like your representations of data. It's like your classes that model data, hence models. Your controllers are the things that sort of render views, right? They control different things. They take some models and they stick them into a view, and your view is essentially like your templates. They're your ways of viewing. Well, I mean, they're your screens essentially, right? They're sort of the graphical representations that you can interact with on a web page. For example, if it's a web page, right? But like MVC is super old. Like people used to do MVC in C#, for example. But anyways, I mean, that's MVC, but then they did MVVM, which I guess then had less emphasis on the controller, and a view model then is sort of another layer. I guess you could think of it on top of the view or as a layer below the model, depending on how you look at it, right? But a view model in my mind then is a way of allowing the view to be dumber, quotation marks dumber, right? It's like dumbing down your view and removing logic. So like, think about it. Maybe sometimes you have computed properties such as, let's say that in your model you have a representation of a user and the user have a birth date, but you don't want the view to have to compute the age of the user through the by using the birth date, but you actually want to display the age. So maybe that's the job of the view model. So maybe that's the job for the view model. But okay, if we're gonna talk this much about many details, we're not going to ever get to Vue. so this is sort of just a short explanation of like MVVM. And so I think Vue is sort of MVVM inspired. And and actually, yeah, of course, I mean, here they say in the first like 4 words, Vue, pronounced Vue like a view, right? Is a progressive framework for building user interfaces. So like, it's probably Vue. It's very Vue based, right? I guess that's what we're getting at that. And yeah, it's high and low. You're capable of building very simple, small applications, but you can also get, of course, build very large scale applications. And it's my understanding is that there are very large scale applications out in the wild that are actually built with Vue now. So, anyways, here's, I mean, the first interesting piece of information that I think we can find in this guide, right? It's like they're saying, okay, the easiest way to get started is to just drop this script tag into one of your files, right? So one of the big selling points with Vue is that you can incrementally adopt it, right? It's not like you have to say, okay, we are going to use Vue in our big project that we now currently have. So now we have to rewrite every single page or component or whatever it is that we're working with, right? You don't have to do that. You can actually just incrementally introduce Vue. You can throw some Vue in here, throw some Vue in here, and throw some Vue in here, right? Like step by step. And another testament to that, I guess, is this sort of throwback to the old school way of introducing code, like external JavaScript code in your code base. It's like, well, just load Vue.js from this CDN that's available, right? Just throw this script tag in, and suddenly you have Vue. I'm like, wait, what? You mean like I shouldn't install it via npm? You mean like I shouldn't use some kind of complex command line tool? I shouldn't use like interact with like React? What is that called? React Start app? Create React app? Sorry, I keep forgetting. But like there's a repository for constructing or like scaffolding out the React app. And I mean, I'm not bashing on React. I mean, React is absolutely great, and maybe I should say, pure React in my mind is great. I can't speak to impure React, right? But like Redux, for example, fantastic. Wow, right? The things that has done for web development just blows my mind. Anyway, but I mean, just the fact that you need a repository that helps you sort of boot up in order to get your app up and running is like a massive what is that, like a roadblock or something like that, like a first initial hurdle that you have to get over. And it just feels kind of insane, right? It's like, well, I have this very simple app yet, right? Or like now I have this very simple app. I don't know if I'm going to scale to something crazy yet. So currently I just have something small. So can't I just sort of start small? So actually, I think this is pretty cool. I mean, first I was like, wait, what? But actually, it's pretty cool. It's like we can actually start really, really small, right? It's like I'll create an index.html file, throw the script tag in. Maybe, I mean, I'll give myself the luxury of creating another main file, right? I won't put my JavaScript in the index file, right? But I'll just have two script files. So this Vue file and then one main.js file that I'll load in, where I'll put all my own JavaScript, and then I can just get started, right? I mean, if you think about it, that's insane, right? Like, it's like, suddenly you're off. So if Vue gives you a lot of power, and if that's all you need to get started, then that's fantastic, right? And then of course later on you probably need something else, right? But currently you don't need like a whole build system just in order to experiment with your own small idea. But you don't have to worry about painting yourself into a corner that you can't get out of, right? It's the way I often depict this when you're sort of under abstracting, right? If you're under abstracting, you tend to paint yourself into a corner, and then like suddenly you have this new idea, or you're hit with new requirements, and you're realizing, ooh, it's gonna be really painful to get to that point given where I am now. So I don't really think that's the situation with Vue.js, because in my mind it seems like they've thought about that. Okay, anyways, let's move on. Okay, so they're also showing here that there are two versions. There's the development version and there's the production version. So the development version, as they're saying here, includes helpful console warnings. So when we're developing, we'll throw this in. Okay. And all right, so they're saying then that, okay, yeah, as we were mentioning before, there is this installation page, and they do have a command line interface, of course, right? I mean, they have thought about sort of build systems and Webpack, and like bundling all of your different files into single files and minification, all that stuff. Like, I mean, clearly they're professional web developers, so they've been thinking about this, but they're just emphasizing that, I mean, to get started, don't worry about that. Just get started, use this simple stuff. Okay. Then, declarative rendering. So, well, rendings, or wait, sorry, of course I meant rendering. So here's the first key point, right? This kind of thing you probably recognize if you've ever tried, I mean, Ember or Angular or, React not so much, but templates, essentially, right? Knockout.js, I believe, right? So this sort of mustache syntax, anyways, where you intermingle HTML with these sort of template commands. So you have this raw HTML file where you have a div which has an ID of app, and then as a content, or as the content to that div, you have this like curly braces, and then the word message, and then curly braces. So like it's a double mustache, and then the word message. And this should immediately imply to you that we're looking at something that will be run through a templating engine, where whatever is in these mustaches or this double stash will be replaced by a value. So essentially we're just saying that I want, like, this HTML says that I want to have this div here, and I want its ID to be app, but in here I want to render out some kind of string, but I don't yet know what the string is. So that string is going to come to me via the view model, right? I'm not sure if view model is actually an appropriate term yet, because we haven't gotten that far in the documentation, but I mean, I would think of it sort of as that comes through the view model. So it's the model that's passed to the view. And as you can see here, okay, in the second screen here, then they're saying, okay, well, this is the sort of code behind that, or I mean, this is the JS that's sort of paired up with that. So if you have that HTML that we just looked at, and then you have this JS stuff down here, then that's it. Wait, maybe I should make the font size bigger. Sorry about that. Woof, maybe that becomes super big. Let's try this. Okay, so So then they're creating a variable called app, and then they're instantiating the class view. So there's a new view, and then they're passing these options in. The first option is this EL thing, right? The key EL points to the string #app, which, so EL or L stands for element, right? So they're saying the root of my, like, this view is the HTML element with the ID app, right? So they're going to search through your whole HTML document to find something that has the ID app, and then they're going to treat that as the root of this particular view that you are now rendering, right? So that's pretty simple, right? And I would assume, maybe I'm wrong here, but I would assume that you could then have multiple views. You could just say, So app is one view, and then you would say something else is another view, which targets another ID, right? Another element. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see. Okay. Then they have a key called data, and they're passing in an object to that. And then there's a key value pair, or I mean, there's a key in data called message that's pointing to the string hello view, right? So if we look at these two things, the HTML and the JS, this should imply to us that probably a view always has this structure where you have L, so you're targeting something, and then you have this data keyword. And then whatever you put inside of this data keyword are variables that will be exposed to the view, because here they have message in the HTML, and then here they have the key message in JavaScript. And then they're putting the string hello view there. And then, of course, if we look at this result that comes out here, down here, then it seems that the string hello view is what comes out. So, I mean, I'm emphasizing that in the HTML here, we're not seeing data.message, for example. So it's not like the keyword, it's not like the whole options object here is passed to the view or to the HTML template. It's more like the contents of data, right? This object that I'm highlighting now, this object is what's passed into the HTML, or is sort of are the variables that are exposed to the template, to this view. All right. And I mean, that's a Vue app. It looks pretty silly, but what they're saying here is that this is pretty cool. They're saying everything is now reactive. And how do we know that, right? What you can do is you can open the JavaScript console. So let's say inspect here. I'm right-clicking and saying inspect. And bazoom, we're going into console. Sorry, I'll get a new computer soon. I'm gonna kill this video with lag. Anyways, and yes, what they're saying is essentially change message, right? So they're saying, well, we've created this app, right? Var app equals. So we should have an app variable here. So I'm going to say app, and we seem to have that, right? And then they're saying, well, try to say app.message and set it to something else. So I'm going to say hello world, capital letters. Oof. Hello world. And then you can see actually changed here. Notice, right? Previously, so sorry, I'm going to close the console here because I think my computer is sincerely not liking me right now. So I actually have a terminal and some files set up behind this, so I think we'll use that instead of using the terminal here. Or sorry, instead of using the console here. But as you can see, I mean, hello world changed here, right? So it's reactive. Let me just jump over here to iTerm and see. So I have this folder here where I've put an HTML file and a main.js file. So I'm going to jump into Vim and we're going to open up the index file, the HTML file, right? And you can see we're essentially doing the same thing as we looked at now. It's like we have a simple HTML page where you have a div with the ID app, and then we have this double slash that tries to render a message, and then we're loading Vue, and then we have we load this main.js file. So if I open a vertical split here and then open the main.js file in this other window, you can see this is the same stuff that we had now in or that they showed in the Vue documentation, where we're creating a variable called app, we're instantiating Vue, we're targeting or we're rendering our view in the element with the ID app by saying L hashtag app, and then in our sort of data object, we're passing in under the key message, we're passing in the value hello view, right? And so that's fine, right? And if we then say, okay, well, let's open up this index file, let's look at that. Then we can see we're rendering. Oh, sorry, I need to make this bigger. Then we're rendering hello view, right? And if we would do this, maybe let's just try this, right? In the JavaScript file, let's do something like this: set timeout and pass a function, and this function will say data.message is equal to foobar, right? And we're gonna do that. Whoops, what happened? Okay, we're gonna do that after 2,000 milliseconds. So after two seconds. So I'm refreshing the page now. We get hello view. Wait. I thought this would work. App.data.message foobar. Didn't we do exactly the same thing as they did here? Set app.message to a different value. Hang on, I have to let the cats in. Pardon the intermission. Okay, what was the difference between what they did and what we did? Probably I should let this go because debugging at this moment doesn't make sense, and as we go forward in the documentation, I'm pretty sure we will be able to somehow figure out exactly what was going on. But let's maybe first, but then I'm gonna have to yeah, but maybe let's just first console log something here to see if we actually have access to that. Yeah, we have that view instance. Cannot set property message of undefined. Aha, so app.data. So we don't have access to data. Oh, sorry, because they're setting app.message. They're not setting data explicitly, right? So they're targeting it by not saying app.data.message. They're targeting it by saying app.message, right? So let me change this from 2000 to 1000, and then let's just rerun this again. So, wow, now you can see foobar, right? We're reloading. We have hello view, and then after 1 second we get foobar instead. So super cool. I mean, that's pretty impressive actually. And honestly, I'm super confused about how this thing where whoa. Sorry, hang on. Cats really like to be in videos. I'm not sure how to deal with this. Anyways, so I'm actually pretty confused about how they can manage to sort of observe every property of this data object without using some kind of special setter. I mean, it would totally make sense to me if we would say something like set message and then we would set it to foobar, right? Something like this. I think like Ember used to do this, but I don't know. Maybe it's like some cool JavaScript hacks, or maybe some progress in ES 2015, or I mean, I don't know. Maybe some new JavaScript functionality. Anyways, let's remove this stuff and let's keep on going in the documentation. How are we doing on time? I think we're now on 20 minutes. So let's try to keep going until 30, and then we'll cut it. So. That's cool, right? It's reactive. So whenever we change something in the underlying data, what's actually rendered in the web page actually changes. So, and then of course they're saying, in addition, text interpolation, like in addition to sort of rendering a string to page, you can of course also bind values to like element attributes, right? As they show here, where they say, okay, Vbind, so that's a special keyword for Vue, the title parameter, or sorry, the title attribute of this span element, or the span tag, to the value of the variable message, right? So let's actually try that, right? Let's say we have this app, and I'm gonna say Vbind, and what do I want to bind? Well, I want to bind the title of this div. Really kind of makes no sense. Oh, actually, sorry, let's add a span here for the message, right? So span, and then I'm going to say vbind, the title of this span, to, did they do like this? Yeah, so equals, and then quotation marks, to the variable message. I'm going to close that tag, indent that, and close the span here, right? Let's look at that again. If we run this again, we have hello view, of course, here. But if I hover over this, you can see, you can't maybe see, but now you can see here. I actually have the message hello view, right? In the title of that thing, right? So using vbind, so it's like a key value thing, right? Or, sorry, it's not like a key value thing. It's like we're using the keyword vbind to say that we want to bind an attribute. Then we say colon, and then we say what attribute it is that we want to bind. And then we say equals, and then quotation marks, and then the name of the variable that we want to read the value from, right? Or that we want to bind the title to, right? And of course, this is also reactive. So whenever I'm not sure why I removed this set timeout thing, right? Let's put that back to 2000 and then let's run again, right? So hello view is the text, and then it changes to foobar. And as we've done that, of course, the title changes as well. So also the title property of this thing have changed to foobar. So, I mean, yeah, pretty cool. You can use that for links or like anything, right? And then they're just showing another example here where where the message is based on the date of when you loaded this particular page. And yeah, so then they're saying, emphasizing here that this thing that we just saw that was called Vbind, that's called in Vue.js a directive, right? Which I guess is similar to like directives in Angular. So directives are prefixed with v dash, right, to emphasize that they are special attributes, which is probably a pretty smart thing, right? Like if you think about the conflict with class and class name in React. But anyways, that's a side note, right? So v dash bind, but they're also emphasizing then that directives are prefixed with v dash, so we're gonna see more directives, more things that are also prefixed with v dash. And actually, I mean, we'll probably cut and we'll look at that next time, but here you have v dash 4, for example, so like in order to loop. So that's another way of, or that is another directive that essentially then is prefixed with v dash. And yeah, so that's what makes or whenever you see a vbind, no, sorry, whenever you see something that's prefixed with v dash, then you know that there's some portion of, or that you know that portion of the template is sort of not necessarily reactive, but is, let's say, dynamic. It will be, or it might be changed on the basis of what is in your view model, what is in the data property of the data that's passed to the view, essentially. And since it's reactive, it also depends on what will change in that view. And here we can also see, I mean, let's just pause for a moment and reflect over the fact that we used set timeout and then actually mutated a property, right? So this is really like embrace mutation. It's like they're saying bind up everything, like using, like it's kind of like this classic observer pattern scenario. It's like, let's make everything observe this your data models, right? And then just change your data models freely, right? And then everything will react to that. And that's actually, I mean, it's a very it's a pretty simple model, and you shouldn't underestimate the powerfulness, the power of, so stupid. You shouldn't underestimate the power of having something simple, right? That means we can control it, right? So that means we can use it. Also, simple doesn't necessarily mean not flexible. Anyways, okay. So yeah, and then they're saying here again, of course, yeah, as we were saying, the title would change. So even if you vbind a attribute, that's also reactive. Okay, next step is conditional and loops, but I think we're gonna cut here, and I will continue on that in the next video. Let me know what you think about this series. I hope you are interested to follow along on this journey of learning Vue.js, and yeah, feel free to shoot anything in the comments. Remember to subscribe so that you won't miss the next video. Thanks a ton for watching, and I will see you in the next one.